Hey folks, this is a 1971 Fender Bassman, and I believe it's a Bassman 50, but they didn't call it a Bassman 50 back then. They just called it a Bassman amp. And I have a different one, a Fender Bassman that I restored a while back, but this one's a little bit different. This uses a different circuit. This one uses an AA371 circuit, which is a little older than the AB165. Very few subtle differences, but there is a difference in the tone stack, which I think is going to be really good. So what I've done on this one is I actually had to replace this this front. The one that was there was just completely destroyed, and I was able to get a reproduction one, and it's metal. It says Fender. It's the real deal. It looks just like the one that was there, except it's clean. And I did a full recap on this thing, and you'll see that I put all these orange drops in here. Right here like that. I also replaced the bias caps, right? This is in the bias section. And there's some electrolytics right here that I replaced, and then there's two more right here. There's one electrolytic here I didn't replace yet. It's a 1 microfarad electrolytic, which I didn't have, so I'll get to that one later. But I also replaced these two ceramic discs. Here's one, here's the other. Now the reason why I started replacing everything is because when I first got the amp it did work, but I was getting like crackling and sizzling, which generally means that you have a bad cap. Here's one of the ceramic discs that I took out, right? You'll see they're much bigger than the new ones. But look what happened with this one. As soon as I put a plastic tool in there to tap around, this thing just cracked in half. So that's probably what my issue was. So that's why I changed the ceramic cap. These things don't fail, but when they do, they're bad. And here's all the other components I took out. I've actually tested them, and they're a little out of spec. Like this is supposed to be a 50 microfarad. It's a 60, 62, and they've got some resistance in there. And I'm going to keep these components for other amps that I restore. But what I have at this point is a relatively new amp. I've checked all the resistors. The resistors are all good. The only one that was out of spec was this 3.5K bias resistor, so I replaced that, and everything else is in really good shape. Let me flip it over and show you the other side. Alright, here's the back of the amp, and you know, you can't tell with these things. It's very deceiving with these Fenders, you know, simply because there's really no marking on it that tells you what year it is. A lot of people see this 67 and think it's year 1967. It's not. But that's how I know it's a 50. It's a 50 watt RMS amp, 4 ohms. And take a look at the chassis. Look at the shine on this thing. This is all original, right? This is all Fender parts. I mean, if you look at the output transformer there, it says Fender. And what I did was, I had a little bit of rust here. And I put some navel jelly on it. And I only left it on for like 30 seconds, and when I took it off, like 60 years of grime just came off. So I did the whole chassis, and you know, just for 30 seconds, put it on there, wiped it off, and I got all those years of cigarette smoke and gook off the chassis, and it basically looks brand new at this point. So this thing is sweet, it really is. I also did the tube shields. They were like brown. So I've cleaned those off, and they're still pitted from age, but that's okay. It makes it authentic. But this thing is good. The only thing I really have left to do at this point is to put this thing on a scope and make sure that the signal is solid. I have an audio generator that I'm waiting for, which when I get that, I'll pop it on there and see what this thing looks like. But this thing's a player. Let me show you the case. I've showed you this in a previous video, but I want to show you the case. Right. Alright, here's the case. I'm not going to re-Tolex the case. The case has some road wear, right? It's old, but I'm going to leave it because it looks good. I did replace this grill cloth which I've showed you, and it's a nice silver and blue, and it's going to look really nice when I pop that amp in there. But before I do that, I have to hook it up to the scope and make sure that the signal is good and I've got no noise in there. So that's where we are with this Fender. This is going to be just a one-shot deal because the amp is really done. I'm not going to show you anything else on this one. I may do a video on how to bias it, possibly before I wrap this one up, but I'll put that up in another episode. Alright, so that's it for this one. Let's see what else we got. Oh, one other thing I want to show you on this amp. I did notice on this transformer that I've got these little drips. See that right there? That means at some point in this thing's life, which is what, 30, 45 years, something like that, this thing's gotten hot and it started to drip some of the shellac that's inside the transformer. I've tested it, it works fine, it doesn't get hot. I've put a heat gun on it to check, you know, the temperature gun to check the transformer. It's working fine. But over the years, this thing's gotten hot. So that's a sign. If you ever get one of these things and you see those drips, you may want to check the transformer out and make sure it's okay. Alright, let's move on to the next thing. Well, I've also been busy today making a buzz box. And what's a buzz box? You could ask Buzz 1151. Basically, this is his recipe. So this is the equivalent of a dim bulb tester, except instead of using a bulb, what you use on this is an amp meter and a voltmeter. Now, on antique radios, you would never use anything more than 1 amp. But on an amplifier like the Fender that I just showed you, those things can push 2 and 3 amps. So I wanted to have something in the 2 to 3 range. So 0 to 3 is perfect. Let me show you what the inside looks like. So basically, your power goes in. You've got an on-off switch right here. Okay. And from the on-off switch, one side of the switch comes over here and goes to the amp meter. The other side of the switch comes over here and goes to the power lead. Okay? And then the other side of the power goes to the volt. And then the voltmeter comes across here and goes on the other side of the outlet, and that completes the circuit. Very, very simple. Buzz has a video up that shows you how to do it. Put this all together, nice and secure. A nice little cheap wooden box. It's got a latch on it, and we're going to fire it up and see what it looks like. And what we'll do is we'll bring up the amp that I showed you, and we'll see what this thing does from a amp perspective. So I've got my isolation transformer on. I've got my variac up. Let's bring this up and see what happens. Okay, so we've got 110 volts. Alright, let's watch that amp meter. It's sitting there. It's sitting there at about half an amp. And this thing is warming up. Alright, this amp is on, by the way. It's plugged in at the top here. So what you're seeing is the amp actually warm up. And I think all said and done, we should be pushing about an amp on this thing. It's just about warmed up at this point. Now you'll see this amp it has a 2 amp fuse in it, so obviously when you're playing, it's gonna push the power up. But that's it. So that's how that looks. We'll turn that down. So we have our buzz box, and we're in good shape there. So I don't need to worry about the dim bulb tester anymore. I can get rid of that big thing I had. So a shout out to Buzz for the recipe here. So that's done. That's done. Let's see what else we got. All right, last thing for today. In a previous video, which was the Philco 46-1201, you heard me mention that I wish I had a decade box. And that's exactly what this is. So this is a decade resistance box. Got it very, very cheap on Amazon. Really actually very nice unit. It's got rubber protector on it, and it's built really well. It's pretty solid and pretty heavy. And it's your standard decade box. So you connect here, your circuit, and you've got 1 through 1 meg, 2 through 2 meg, 3 through 3 meg, and 4 through 4 meg. And you put a combination of switches to get the value that you think you need. So for example, if I wanted to try a 30,000 or a 30K, I could push that switch right there. That's 30K. If I wanted to do a, let's say, maybe a 25K, let's say, I could do, let's say, a 20K right there, and a 2, and a 3. That's 25. So, you know, you can do anything that you want to experiment. This would have been really helpful for me when I was troubleshooting the audio of that turntable. So, if you need one of these things, if you ever work on stuff that you want to play with resistor values, definitely a worthwhile investment. Alright, that's it for the odds and sods video. I'll see you guys later. My next project will be revealed shortly, although I am going to be doing some travel. so I'm not going to have that up for another week or two. But I do have a plan. So, all right, folks, take care. This is Ron.